Today's story, folks, is about the missing Mary Celeste. Now, I know some of you may have heard this one before, but tonight I want to take you deeper beyond the usual facts, beyond the legend, and into the cold, uneasy silence of the Atlantic. And at the end of this broadcast, I'll share my own theories about what may have happened out there. So, imagine this for a moment. You are a sailor in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. It is December 1872. The sea around you is iron gray. The wind cuts through your coat. The deck beneath your boots is slick with salt and cold spray. And then, through the mist, you see her. A ship, drifting, moving strangely. Her sails are partly set, her course uncertain, as though invisible hands are still trying to guide her forward. You call out across the water, "Ahoy!" but no one answers. Not a voice, not a footstep, not a shadow moving on deck, nothing. Then the boarding party climbs aboard, and I imagine them preparing themselves for the worst. Broken timber, blood on the boards, some clear sign of disaster. But that is not what they find. They find food, water, cargo, clothes, personal belongings, a ship that can still sail. What they do not find is a captain, a crew, a family, or even a body. 10 people have vanished from the Mary Celeste. And this is the moment when the story becomes impossible to look away from. This is the ghost ship that sailed without a soul, the mystery of the Mary Celeste. And before we go any further, I want you to ask yourself something. If you found the ship still floating, still stocked with supplies, but completely empty, would you climb aboard? Let me know below if you would get on board. With that question asked, let's get started. In the 19th century, brigantines like the Mary Celeste were practical cargo vessels, small enough to sail with modest crews, but strong enough to face the Atlantic. And that is what makes this abandonment so strange. This was not a delicate pleasure boat. This was a working ship, built for hard seas, built to survive. Before the Mary Celeste became a ghost story, she was simply a merchant ship. That detail matters because legends make things feel unreal. But this began with wood, canvas, cargo, and men doing dangerous work for ordinary reasons. She was built in Nova Scotia in 1861 and first launched under another name, Amazon. For years, she carried cargo across rough, unpredictable routes. She survived accidents, repairs, sales, and new owners. Then, in 1869, under American registration, she was given the name that would follow her into history, Mary Celeste. On the 7th of November, 1872, she left New York bound for Genoa, Italy. In her hold were more than 1,700 barrels of industrial alcohol. On board were Captain Benjamin Spooner Briggs, his wife Sarah, their 2-year-old daughter Sophia, and 7 crewmen. And here is the important thing. Briggs was not reckless. He was experienced, careful, respected. So whatever happened out there, it was not because he did not understand the sea. Which brings us to one disturbing question. What would have to happen for a careful captain to place his wife, his child, and his crew into a small boat in the middle of the Atlantic? Nearly a month later, the brigantine Dei Gratia was sailing near the Azores when Captain David Morehouse noticed the vessel behaving strangely. She was under sail, but not properly. She looked neglected. She did not answer signals, and then Morehouse realized something unsettling. Slowly, he knew that ship. It was the Mary Celeste, and she should have been much farther along by then. The Mary Celeste was found roughly 400 nautical miles from the Azores. The Dei Gratia had left New York after her, which made the sighting feel even more wrong. By every expectation, the Mary Celeste should already have been closer to Europe. Instead, there she was, drifting, silent, waiting. Morehouse sent a boarding party across the water. 2 men climbed aboard, Oliver DeVoe and John Wright. And the first thing they noticed was not destruction. It was absence. That is the chilling part. The ship did not look like the scene of a massacre. It looked as if people had stepped away for a moment and never returned. No one was on deck, no one was below, No one answered from the cabins. There was no obvious sign of a struggle, just rooms, objects, silence, the kind of silence that makes every ordinary thing feel suspicious, a cup, a coat, a doorway left open. If you have ever walked into a place and felt that someone had only just left, you can almost feel the unease of that moment. The ship was disheveled, yes, but not destroyed. There was water in the hold, enough to concern a captain, perhaps, but not enough to sink her. Food and drinking water remained. The cargo was mostly intact. The crew's belongings had not been stolen, but the lifeboat was gone. Some papers and navigational instruments were missing, and the final log entry was dated the 25th of November. So the question keeps coming back. Did they leave because they saw danger or because they imagined it? Captain Briggs was gone. Sarah Briggs was gone. Their little daughter Sophia was gone. 7 crewmen were gone with them. 10 people had disappeared into the Atlantic. And that, for me, is what makes this case so haunting. It is not just an abandoned ship. It is a missing family, a missing crew, a decision made somewhere at sea that we can never ask them about. The crew of the Dei Gratia sailed the abandoned Mary Celeste to Gibraltar. At first, this should have been a salvage claim. Find a ship, save a ship, receive a reward. Simple. But nothing about the Mary Celeste stayed simple for long. The moment officials looked closer, the questions multiplied. Salvage hearings were common in maritime law. If a crew rescued a drifting vessel and brought it safely to port, they could be awarded money. But in this case, the empty ship turned a routine legal process into something darker, an investigation. Officials considered almost every grim possibility: piracy, mutiny, murder, fraud, conspiracy. Had the crew of the Dei Gratia harmed the people aboard the Mary Celeste? Had Captain Briggs staged the abandonment? Had violence broken out between men trapped together at sea? These are dark questions, but in a case like this, they had to be asked. And as a listener, this is where you begin sorting the theories in your own mind. What feels possible, what feels too convenient, and what feels terrifyingly ordinary. And yet, the evidence would not cooperate. There was no convincing sign of looting, no clear trace of murder, no bodies, no confession, no final message. In the end, the court found no proof of foul play, which is frustrating, frankly, because if it was not murder, not piracy, and not mutiny, what are we left with? A ship, a missing boat, and fear. The Mary Celeste became a blank space where imagination rushed in. Pirates? Maybe, except valuables remained behind. Mutiny? Possible, except there was no convincing evidence. Sea monsters, madness, the supernatural? Those make good stories, but they do not fit the facts very well. The most persuasive explanations are quieter than that, less dramatic, and somehow more tragic. One possibility is that Captain Briggs believed the ship was sinking. A pump had been disassembled. A sounding rod was found nearby. Now that might sound like a small detail, but at sea, small details can become enormous. If the crew misread the amount of water in the hold, or if the pump was failing, Briggs may have believed the Mary Celeste was in greater danger than she really was. Another theory centers on the cargo: more than 1,700 barrels of industrial alcohol. That is a detail worth sitting with. If vapor escaped and built up below deck, it may have created the threat, or even the sound of an explosion. Not a Hollywood fireball, not flames tearing through the night, maybe just a sudden pressure, a sharp noise, a warning sign. Just enough fear to make a cautious captain think we need to get off this ship now. And remember, this was industrial alcohol, not drinking alcohol. Some barrels were later found empty or leaking, which has helped fuel the theory that fumes may have played a role in the crew's decision to leave the ship. Imagine smelling it. Imagine hearing something shift below deck. Imagine looking at your wife, your child, your crew, and wondering how many seconds you have to decide. Picture that moment. Briggs hears something alarming below deck. The ship has taken on water. The weather has been rough. The cargo is dangerous. His wife and child are aboard. What does he do? What would you do? Stay on a ship you fear may explode or sink? Or take the boat? just for a short while, just until you are sure? And that may be where the tragedy begins. If the lifeboat was tied to the ship and that line broke, the people in the boat could have drifted away in heavy seas. The Mary Celeste, still seaworthy, would continue sailing. The people who left her would be lost, and that possibility is awful because it feels so ordinary. No monster, no villain, just fear, weather, a rope, and a decision made too quickly. It is not the wildest explanation. It is worse than that. It is believable. And maybe that is why this story still lingers. The Mary Celeste did not disappear. She kept sailing under new owners for years. In 1885, she met an inglorious end near Haiti, deliberately wrecked as part of an insurance fraud. There is something strangely sad about that, isn't there? After all the mystery, all the fear, all the legend, the ship's final chapter was not supernatural at all. It was ordinary human greed. But by then, her real life had already been swallowed by her legend. The story endures because it gives us almost everything except an answer: a seaworthy ship, an untouched cargo, a missing boat, a silent deck, a final log entry, a family and crew gone without a trace. It is all there, laid out like evidence on a table, and still the center is empty. And maybe that is what unsettles me most. The facts are not missing, the people are. So next time you hear the phrase ghost ship, remember the Mary Celeste. Imagine her moving through the Atlantic with no hand on the wheel, her cabins waiting, her lifeboat missing, her last entry already 10 days old. And ask yourself one final question. If the ship survived, why didn't they? So to pull the threads together, the Mary Celeste left New York in November 1872 with Captain Briggs, his family, 7 crewmen, and a cargo of industrial alcohol. Less than a month later, she was found adrift near the Azores, seaworthy, supplied, and almost intact, but utterly empty. No proven piracy, no confirmed mutiny, no bodies, just a missing lifeboat, a silent ship, and one of the most enduring questions in maritime history. Now here is one of my theories. The Mary Celeste was carrying more than 1,700 barrels of industrial alcohol. One theory is that fumes leaked from some of the barrels and built up below deck. There may not have been a massive explosion, but even a sudden rush of vapor, a loud pressure burst, or the smell of alcohol fumes could have terrified Captain Briggs. He may have believed the ship was about to explode and ordered everyone into the lifeboat temporarily. The tragedy may have happened when the lifeboat drifted away or the rope tying it to the ship snapped. The Mary Celeste kept sailing, but the people in the boat were lost. And just to be clear, this was industrial alcohol, not rum. So this wasn't a party boat. It was more like a floating health and safety violation. Ha ha ha. Now my second theory is the false sinking theory. It's possible that Captain Briggs thought the ship was taking on dangerous amounts of water. The ship's pump had problems, and if the crew misread how much water was in the hold, they may have believed the Mary Celeste was sinking. In that situation, Briggs might have decided to abandon ship quickly, taking the crew and his family into the lifeboat. But the Mary Celeste was actually still seaworthy. Once the lifeboat separated from the ship, the people were left helpless in the open Atlantic. And then there is the possibility that the ship DEI drowned all on board so they can make a claim of the Mary Celeste. That's it for today, folks. If this mystery pulled you in, follow the show so you do not miss the next one. And if you know someone who loves unsolved history, send them this episode. Then ask them what they think really happened aboard the Mary Celeste. Leave a rating or review if you can. It helps more curious listeners find the show. Next time, we step into another mystery, a lonely lighthouse, 3 missing keepers, and a logbook that seems to stop just when the fear begins. I'll be there with you, following the clues one by one. Until next time, keep listening for the silences.